All right, so a couple days ago, I made that video that was about Jim Clyburn, the representative from South Carolina, throwing his hat in the ring, throwing his endorsement behind Nina Turner's opponent in that special election in Ohio. And we talked about the reasons why he might feel incentivized to do this. One of those is Nina Turner supports policies like Medicare for All and reigning in the power of Big Pharma. And Jim Clyburn happens to be one of the biggest recipients of Big Pharma and health insurance donations that he takes effectively as bribes to then go oppose legislation like Medicare for All. And I have an interview here from Mehdi Hasan's channel. He's on Peacock, I guess it is, which is an MSNBC affiliate. And Mehdi has actually been doing some really good interviews lately and actually holding some politicians' feet to the fire. And this is a good example of this because I think he asked some really good questions in this. So I wanted to bring it to your attention and talk about how bullshit some of these answers from Jim Clyburn is. I mean, he's a totally dishonest actor. And I think you'll see what I mean by these clips that we get into. So let's go ahead and break this down as we go.
I mean, I guess the context is you have been quite critical of the left of your party. The Democrats lost a net dozen House seats last November. Despite winning the White House, you've been very critical of the party's progressive wing for, quote, sloganeering, you say, with movements like Medicare for All and defund the police. In May, though, Congressman, a focus group study from the polling firm Lake Research Partners found that swing voters paid only a little attention to Republican attacks on socialism or defunding the police, which they viewed as divisive fear-mongering, and that the bigger problem was that many voters didn't have a clear grasp of what the Democratic Party stood for. So is the whole attention on defund the police really a deflection by the party leadership from your own failures? That's what your critics on the left would say.
That is absolutely poppycock. I know what I'm talking about. I'm out here with the voters every day. I did a town hall meeting last night in Jasper County, South Carolina. I can tell you, defund the police is a non-starter, even with black people. And if you don't think that's true, then look at the results of what just happened in New York City's election. So the proof is in the pudding. I know what I'm talking about. I talk to people every day. And defund the police is a chokehold around the Democratic Party.
Okay, so let's just pause here for a second. Understand that he just completely avoided the question, right? Mehdi Hasan brought him actual data that is from their own people, data that was collected on this issue, and they asked voters, hey, what was the reason why you would be hesitant to support the Democratic Party? And people said it wasn't because of defund the police, it was because they didn't know what you fucking stood for because you weren't emphasizing your support of policies that are overwhelmingly popular among the American people. One of those policies that you could have ran on in the November elections with your Democratic establishment candidates would have been Medicare for All, a policy that is overwhelmingly supported by the American people, and a policy that Jim Clyburn refers to as sloganeering. Okay, notice how he groups together Medicare for All and defund the police, which are both policy positions, which we can debate the merits of, but they're both policy positions. He calls them sloganeering and groups them together. First of all, even if you want to talk about just on a popularity side, defund the police may be less popular, but Medicare for All is overwhelmingly supported by the American people. So that's not a slogan, it's a policy that you are failing to enact because you're corrupt. On top of that, as for the popularity of defund the police, I wonder if defund the police is yet to become as popular as something like Medicare for All because of the fact that politicians like this are constantly going out and railing against it without actually discussing the substance of it. Imagine if we had politicians who were actually going to willing to go out and make the positive case for defunding the police and reallocating those resources towards more effective community-based programs. They don't even try to make those arguments. They don't even have good faith, honest discussions about what defund the police even means. They just feed directly into the Republican attack lines against them by saying, oh, defund the police is a radical, scary concept, when it's just not. Go look at the police budgets. Our police here in the United States have larger collective budgets than most countries' militaries. So it's completely ridiculous. They never have these contextual discussions or anything like that. They just use it as a slogan and then never discuss the actual substance of it because they don't believe in the substance of it and they don't care about the substance of it. They're just wanting to have these deflections, as Mehdi Hasan put it, instead of actually getting to the root cause of why people didn't support their party. So let's go ahead and continue and listen to what he had to say about this.
And let me remind you, if you're going to categorize left and right, I'm on the left of my party. Nobody can call me anything but a progressive. And been one all of my life. Met my wife in jail, being progressive. So come on.
Okay, listen, he clearly has a warped definition of what it means to be a progressive, and this is why I don't even call myself a progressive. They've completely co-opted that term. It's meaningless now. So that's why I affirmatively say all the time that I am an anti-imperialist, an anti-capitalist, I'm a socialist. I think those are clear marks that we can make or lines that we can draw in the sand now because the term progressive clearly has absolutely no meaning if somebody like Jim Clyburn is applying that to himself. So let's go ahead and continue here.
Appreciate that. But Congressman, just on the specific issues, because I know you care strongly about this, when you say defund the police, I'm not talking about the popularity of it. I'm talking about whether it hurt your party. None of the candidates in the November House elections ran on defund the police. You mentioned New York. Not a single New York mayoral candidate ran on defund the police. So I'm not sure why. I mean, I know why Republicans keep going on and on about it. I'm not sure why you seem to think it's such a big problem for your party.
Ask Jimmy Harrison, who was running for the United States Senate here in South Carolina. Just ask him. Ask Abigail Spanberger up in Virginia why I said it. I said it because it's real. It's a real problem. We should stop sloganeering.
Okay, so in other words, I'm going to completely ignore the data that you just presented where voters were saying that defund the police was not the main reason why they didn't support the Democratic candidate. I'm going to completely ignore that and instead just provide my random former CIA agent Abigail Spanberger's testimony here and take that as a word as if it's gospel, okay? Don't listen to the data, don't listen to the actual question that was on the table and about whether or not it actually affected the popularity of candidates who, by the way, as Mehdi Hasan just pointed out, were not running on defund the police. How are you going to say, oh, well, Eric Adams in the New York City primary, he won because he wasn't supporting defund the police? Nobody else in the race was saying defund the police. Literally none of them. So how are you saying that defund the police is the reason somebody loses an election when that wasn't a policy that they supported? He's just completely making it up and using his anecdotes to completely ignore the actual evidence that was presented to him at the beginning of the interview. So continuing on.
In 1960, Burn, Baby Burn, destroyed our movement. And defund the police will do the same thing to progressive movements today. This kind of sloganeering does us no good.
I take your point on sloganeering. I guess the problem is I watched a lot of Republican attack ads last November. They did mention defund the police. They also mentioned Nancy Pelosi. I'm sure you wouldn't say Nancy Pelosi is to blame for you losing. They mentioned corruption. The problem is Republicans are going to attack you always as socialists and lefties. And I think the problem becomes, are you kind of agreeing with their attack on your own party by talking so much about it? I guess that's the discussion. Last word to you, Congressman.
I know what I feel. I know one single Democrat to tell me that Nancy Pelosi is a problem. I've had plenty Democrats to tell me defund the police is a problem. So, look, I only know what the facts are.
Okay, so he actually literally does not know what the facts actually are. He just ignored all of the facts that were presented to him and instead just said, no, actually, I know what I'm talking about. Shut the fuck up. I'm going to reference Abigail Spanberger and my other friends, Jamie Harrison, who ran pathetic campaigns and couldn't win on their own merits. And I'm just going to blame sloganeering from activists who weren't even part of these campaigns at all in any way, shape, or form. So he's completely ignoring the facts and then turning around and saying, well, I just support the facts as they are. No, you don't, man. You're delusional. And on top of that, Nancy Pelosi is more of a damaging character than defund the police could ever imagine being. Nancy Pelosi is one of the least popular politicians in the country. I mean, let's look at her favorability just compared to somebody else like Bernie Sanders, who represents the policies like Medicare for All that Jim Clyburn refers to as sloganeering. So Nancy Pelosi favorability. So last time I checked, Nancy Pelosi had literally lower favorability numbers net-wise than Donald Trump. Okay, so she's less popular than even one of the most despised people in the country. So Nancy Pelosi favorability looks like we're at about 54% to 39.8%, so about a 14-point negative rating there. And you compare that to somebody like Bernie Sanders, who supports the progressive policies, the actual progressive leftist policies that Jim Clyburn opposes. And, I mean, you look at this, it's clear as day, okay? Bernie Sanders in the positive, Nancy Pelosi overwhelmingly in the negative. So the lesson here is that Jim Clyburn, along with pretty much the rest of the corporate Democratic establishment, have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. They are out here basically just feeding into Republican attack lines against them and not actually solving any of the underlying problems within their own party, like the corruption, like the fact that people like Jim Clyburn take a bunch of donations from big pharmaceutical companies and health insurance companies to then go oppose legislation like Medicare for All that is overwhelmingly supported by the American people. So the problems with the party are clear. You're not representing the interests of the American people. You're representing the interests of corporations. You're representing the interests of the military-industrial complex, etc. And those are the problems with your party. You're not going to be able to fix those problems if you can't even do an honest reflection.